Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video, I'm going to be testing out a Pokemon for the Master League that I built a while back, but haven't tried until now, and that is my perfect IV level 50 Brutal Swing Hydreigon. Now for the moveset, I'm going to be running Dragon Breath, the Legacy Brutal Swing, and Flash Cannon to hopefully nuke some Fairy types along the way. Now it goes without saying, running Hydreigon in a meta dominated with Rhyperior and Fairy types may not be my brightest idea ever, but I thought it could be an interesting core breaker to try out since it does do very well against the Veltal. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches, and we're off to a nightmare start of the first match, leading Shadow Mewtwo into Duskmane. Now this team is very AVA weak to Duskmane. Honestly, trying to build a balanced team around Hydreigon is basically impossible. Realistically, I liked the idea of Shadow Mewtwo plus Hydreigon, because obviously Mewtwo really does not like a Veltal, but is pretty strong into a lot of other mons. Here, my opponent actually ends up baiting with a Dark Pulse, and I call the Dark Pulse, which does allow me to force a shield in the zeros. My opponent could have farmed down there, so it's actually a pretty big misplay from my opponent, as now they end up wasting energy, and I can go for a one shield farm down with Hydreigon. Hydreigon really could use the energy head start because Flash Cannon, being 70 energy, is a very expensive move. They go for the full send Sunsteel Strike. I'm going to get a full farm down. And now what are they going to send in? Necrozma is out of the way. Opponent now going to bring in Tapu Bulu. Oh my goodness. The question is, do they know about Flash Cannon? Flash Cannon, big damage on a Tapu Bulu. They get Dragon Breath down and don't even make a move. And in the back is Rhyperior. I'm going to throw 11 Dragon Breath, switch, catch, and sneak with the Shadow Mewtwo. And that play guarantees me the win. They do get the 50-50 debuff, but it's not going to matter. For Mewtwo, I think it's a bit of a tricky Pokemon to run currently with how strong a Veltal is. That's why I wanted to try and pair it with Hydreigon, since Hydreigon does an okay job of covering for those weaknesses. Breaking Swipe is going to pick up the knockout. I bring in Hydreigon, and then I pause. I actually think I live this. So I'm going to go for the flex. I'm going to save the shield, tank it with a fraction of health, farm down, and take the win with the shield remaining. Good lead in the next match, Mewtwo versus Tapu Bulu. Tapu Bulu, definitely something I have to keep away from Hydreigon if at all possible. They're staying in, which is great for me. I severely outpace, and Psystrike just does monster damage. Opponent is going to be applying a debuff here with their Nature's Madness. I will commit the shield, and in comes Landorus. Now, Landorus would live a Psystrike. They will not, however, live a Hyper Beam. So I'm going to go for the Hyper Beam, but they knew. They respected. And having a move that expensive shielded is just devastating. That is so much energy lost. I could have just gone for double Psystrike, but I wanted to go for the flashier play, the one-hit knockout with the Hyper Beam, and unfortunately, it backfires big time. They're going to land the Sandsear Storm. I can very comfortably tank another Sandsear Storm from here, but if they're able to make it to a Stone Edge would come very close to knocking out. This matchup is actually one that got a lot worse for Zacian since the Mudshot rework, because the Mudshots actually allow Landorus the ability to farm down. So Landorus does exit very low on health. That does set up a little bit of farm for Hydreigon. In comes the Tapu Bulu. I switch at the last second and snipe with the Psystrike. Psystrike picks up the KO. They lose their energy, but in comes a Veltal to fully farm me down. Now it's up to Hydreigon. If they're running the standard moveset, which is Oblivion Wing and Dark Pulse, I should have a chance here. If it's Focus Blast, of course, I just lose, but they're not. They're running the standard moveset. Come on, Hydreigon. Hydreigon has gotten some pretty nice fast move pressure here, lining up the Flash Cannon and getting the farm down right before they make the move to secure the win. We move to the next match. Actually, same leads as last game. Shadow Mewtwo versus Tapu Bulu. They're going to save switch into Landorus, and I'm more than happy to stay in here, and I learned from my mistake from last game. No more Hyper Beams. We are just going to go for Psystrikes. Opponent can fire off a Sandsear Storm. It's not going to knock out here by any means, but I do decide to shield once just because I do want to try and keep the Mewtwo as healthy as possible. Because Mewtwo, honestly, keeping it healthy will usually work out pretty well for me. I'm going to bring in the Zacian. At this point, our switch timers are very misaligned. They can even save the Landorus at this point and just bring in the Tapu Bulu. But having a switch stock Tapu Bulu here is very fine because it's not on Hydreigon. That's the goal. Just keep the Fairy types away from Hydreigon if at all possible. Tapu Bulu is going to fire off a charge attack here. Grass Knot, I believe, will be able to knock me out, but they make a mistake. They go for the Nature's Madness. That does not KO, and now now I can force a shield or a KO with the Play Rough. Play Rough KOs. In the back is Shadow Ho-Oh, and I get to bring in Hydreigon. Hydreigon honestly getting melted by these Shadow Incinerates. My goodness. That is doing way more damage than it ever should. My opponent is highly likely just to go for a Sacred Fire, but a Sacred Fire would come very close to knocking out as Hydreigon is not bulky at all. So I will shield, I get the Brutal Swing, and while it doesn't KO, it's just going to do too much damage. So the Brutal Swing is going to land, opponent sees the writing on the wall, and concedes the match. Picking up a decent lead in the next match, Shadow Mewtwo versus Kyogre. But the really bad news for me about Kyogre is Kyogre leads almost always have a Fairy type in the back. Here my opponent is going to throw on very poor timing, giving me a Psycho Cut for free. They're going to go for the Surf to grab the shield and now switch out into Dialga. One close combat does not KO Dialga, so I'm forced to go for a Side Strike to soften it up, and then I can bring in the Zacian. Even if I'm going to not be able to win Switch, my goal is to just try and get shields down and hopefully eventually get a farm down with Hydreigon. My opponent again throwing on alignment, so they are giving me quite a few free turns throughout the course of this match, which is definitely helpful, as I do get extra damage every time they throw an alignment, and I'm going to fire off another Close Combat. Close Combat is going to be shielded up by Dialga. They're firing off their energy, and I think my play is going to be to go for an incredibly aggressive Hydreigon farm down. Come on, Hydreigon, get this farm down, but they make it on 1 HP. Absolutely devastating. We lose all of our energy. In the back is a Veltal, and not even Hyper Beam can save us. Hyper Beam does a massive amount of damage, but a Veltal has a huge stab product, able to hang on, and unfortunately, by the narrowest of margins, we do lose the game. We move to the next match, Shadow Mewtwo leading into a Quick Attack Zacian. And if they're on nukes, they love tanking a Psy Strike before they Wild Charge. You know what they can't tank though? A Hyper Beam. Goodbye Mewtwo, they lose 10 quick attacks of energy. In comes Rhyperior, and I'm going to switch out, and now I'm going to send in my Zacian. Opponent banks a ton of energy. They actually bring Groudon in, so they're running double ground in the back. Groudon, a Pokemon I haven't seen for a while. I did really like running it in the previous meta with Dragon Tail, but we are seeing it now with Mudshot. 2 close combats, barely not enough to knock out. They're going to pick up the knockout with the Precipice Blades, and now I'm going to bring in Mewtwo to get a Psycho Cut farm down. This Rhyperior is going to be very annoying to deal with, but since I have energy on the Mewtwo, hopefully I'm going to be able to get this Rhyperior low enough that I can deal with it with Hydreigon. They're going to fire off energy, probably just going for the Breaking Swipe, but since I'm the Shadow Mewtwo, I will end up shielding regardless. It's going to make my life a lot easier if they end up no shielding. They end up double shielding. I'm going to stay in with the Mewtwo. This forces their hand, and now I should be able to win the game with Hydreigon. So I can bring in Hydreigon. If they no shield a Side Strike, I could have just farmed down, but instead they end up double shielding. So now I'm hopefully going to be able to land a Flash Cannon for the win, but they full send. They go for the Rock Wrecker. They go for the Wind Con. Now I have to hope that a Brutal Swing and a farm down will be able to win. And it will. They fire off the move, hoping that I'm at 1 HP, but I'm not. I can survive the 1 hit point of damage through the shield and take the win. We see more Rhyperior in the next match, and Shadow Mewtwo, while it can do okay here, this is not a winning matchup for the Shadow Mewtwo. My opponent surprises me there quite a bit. They throw the Breaking Swipe instantly, and giving Mewtwo free energy by throwing on alignment is not something that's usually going to end up working out, because Shadow Mewtwo already has insanely fast pacing. My opponent, they do it again! They throw an alignment twice! And now, I'm more than happy to shield, but with this free energy, my Mewtwo is actually going to get to a 3rd Psy Strike, and that's the consequence of throwing on alignment. As now, I get the Psy Strike, they switch to catch on Enamorus, but this is going to do almost all of Enamorus' health. Enamorus is very, very frail, but the fact that they save switched and Enamorus does make me quite worried. Because now, I'm worried they're going to have another Fairy type in the back, and that would be an absolute disaster for me. I do get a very nice Quick Attack farm down. Opponent, what are they going to be sending in here? Is it going to be the Rhyperior? No, it's actually a Tabu Bulu. It's the Tabu Bulu. I throw 1 in the move. Unfortunately, I lag by a turn, so they get a 2nd Bullet Seed. And this opponent is throwing every move right when they get it. And I will happily accept this free energy. There's the switch out into Rhyperior, and I'm very close to the back-to-back close combats. Close combat is going to force their hand. They end up shielding. I can switch into Hydreigon, and I should be healthy enough that I can survive a Bullet Seed Seed on the Zacian. And as long as I can survive a Bullet Seed on the Zacian, this game's over. There's nothing my opponent can do. Breaking Swipe is going to hit for super effective damage, but will not KO. They do get the debuff. I overfarm. I can't get to this Flash Cannon, but what I can do is win charge attack priority here as I'm able to land that Brutal Swing, and they're very comfortably in the range where close combat will knock out. So we are able to take the win. Opponent did give us quite a lot of free energy, and we're able to take advantage. Tricky lead in the next match, Mewtwo versus Reshiram. Reshiram, much like Dialga, can just Dragon Breath all the way down in the 2 shield, because Shadow Mewtwo is very, very frail. Well, technically, I believe Mewtwo is supposed to get a 3rd Side Strike, but it could come down to damage registration error, and I'm not really willing to risk that. So I'm going to bank a bunch of energy, send in the Zacian. I overfarm to avoid a catch, and they catch anyway. They read me like a book with that catch onto their Necrozma, and now I'm in a tremendous amount of trouble. They have so much stored energy on that Reshiram, and that catch was just devastating. Had I just thrown the move right when I got it, I would have been fine, but I overpredicted, and now I get punished. They're actually running Iron Head. Typically, when they're running Iron Head, they're on Iron Head Outrage, so when they farm 1 past the Iron Head, this could be an Outrage. I actually am going to Shield here, and that proves to be a really good decision, as it is going to be the Outrage. And now, I mean, they could just bring back in that Reshiram. Reshiram has so much energy. Reshiram can learn Draco Meteor, and they easily have enough for it. I respect it, and I pay the price as the Fusion Flare. That would have been resisted, but that's just a good bait from my opponent. Brutal Swing is going to land, but that's not going to do a lot. And now, no more shields remaining. What is their nuke move? It's Stone Edge. Stone Edge will not KO. I'm going to switch at the last second and snipe down with a Psycho Cut. In the back is Kyogre. Kyogre here. I throw right away, but I don't throw on good timing. Hyper Beam, it lands. A win con appears. Can we get the farm down? We cannot. If I threw the Hyper Beam on good timing, I win that game, but I didn't. I gave them 1 extra turn that they shouldn't have had, and that's the difference between potentially tying that game and unfortunately losing the game. We move to the next match, leading into a Florges. Florges gets absolutely rocked with a Psy Strike, and I am going to respect against a potential Moonblast, but they only end up baiting with Disarming Voice. In comes Ursaluna, and suddenly I'm having a little bit of deja vu. I actually played this person yesterday. I believe it was in the video where I was running the Nihilego and the Shadow Dragonite team. But they save switched to Ursaluna, and I didn't really have anything for it. This time, however, I'm able to tank the Swift, bring in the Zacian, and I'm just going to look to farm up to the back-to-back close combats. They can fire off energy first, but the charge attacks don't hit very hard here. High horsepower, very comfortable survive for the Zacian. I'm at the back-to-back close combats, and they are just going to let that through, so down goes Ursaluna. In comes Florges. Florges is low enough that I think a close combat can actually knock out, so I'll fire off the close combat. Florges actually lives it on 1 HP, but in the back is Kyogre. We have Hydreigon, and the opponent will resign the match. There's trouble a-brewing in the next match, and its name is Reshiram once again. This is a Shundo Reshiram. What a cool flex from the opponent. Reshiram, a very cool pick, but my goodness, it absolutely runs roughshod through this team. I will end up shielding up the Fusion Flare. I'm really hoping at some point that they're just going to let one of these Psy Strikes go. It'd be very helpful if they did, but my opponent knows if I'm staying with Mewtwo, I don't have a great response. So they're just going to double shield. I can bring in the Zacian, and they're firing off the Fusion Flare right before I make it to the play rough. Last time my opponent was able to make a catch out of this matchup, so this time I'm just throwing instantly. I just want this Reshiram gone, but Reshiram only takes neutral from play rough. It's able to hang on. Now they're going to switch out into Landorus. Landorus is going to be met with the play rough. Play rough is going to do some very nice damage to that Landorus. Landorus looking to overfarm, and they will fire off their energy right before I am able to pick up a knockout with a close combat. This is awkward. I'm forced to bring in the Mewtwo. Mewtwo, unfortunately, is going to get outpaced because of how well they overfarmed. I just have to trust and hope that Hydreigon can sweep in this endgame. Hydreigon has energy. It's going to be Palkia. And this is not a winning endgame for me because Palkia will be able to, at this point, the Dragon Breaths do enough that I have to respect an Aqua Tail, and they have a Fusion Flare banked on the Reshiram, so there's just no winning this for me. I shield the Aqua Tail, and right on cue, there's the combo play. So Reshiram, time and time again, proving to be a nightmare for this team to deal with, as we just do not have any answers. Hopping into the final match, Shadow Mewtwo versus Kyogre. Kyogre, the last one did throw on alignment, but this time they don't. They're going to end up actually going for good timing, and in doing so, I'm now going to get to fire off my back-to-back Psy Strikes. And that's one nice thing about the pacing on Mewtwo is it can really put opponents in a difficult spot. There, I try for a Surf catch. My catch attempt is unsuccessful, and my Zacian is going to be answered with Necrozma Duskmane. If they land the Sunsteel, I just get KO'd. So I will shield, and it does end up being the Sunsteel. So that is a massive, massive shield. And now I can fire off the close combat. I can overfarm as well because they're not really close to a move, and I can fire off another CC. Close combat is going to be picking up the knockout if they let it through, which they do. My timer will be up shortly. They have a ton of energy on Kyogre. I switch into the Mewtwo, and this should be a range where I can do 2 Psycho Cuts and KO. So I'm going to shield and go for the 2 Psycho Cuts, but they live on 1 HP, actual 1 HP. The miscalculation, I lose the energy and lose the shield, and now I really need either Zacian or Hydreigon to be good in the back. I decide to send in Zacian, and I'm rewarded with an endgame that I can win, as it's Dialga in the back, and I'm running close combat. The choice to run close combat and forgo Wild Charge was actually an intentional one, because I just really did not want to have my Zacian be a liability against Rhyperior. My opponent is going to overfarm as much as possible. Ironhead will pick up the knockout, but I can bring in Hydreigon, get the farm down before they make their Draco Meteor, farm down Kyogre as well, and take the win. All right, now that we have played quite a few sets of Hydreigon, let's talk final thoughts. Hydreigon definitely does like the cheaper pacing on Brutal Swing, but unfortunately, it's kind of just a dragon that ends up losing to other dragons. And in a meta that already feels hostile to it, with Pokemon like the ever-present Rhyperior plus Fairy Core, where both ends of that core are hitting you for super effective damage, going up against dragons and not being able to emerge victorious really does make it tough for Hydreigon. I'm interested to see what Hydreigon can do in the Master Premier Cup, where some of these legendaries are not, but you know what is still going to be there? Rhyperior, Primarina, Pokemon like that. So overall, the cheaper pacing, and part of the reason why I wanted to test it out, did end up being clutch in a couple matchups, and I did like that it was able to pretty convincingly handle a Veltal, just due to the fact that it had a Sucker Punch resist. Overall, if I had to add up my sets, I definitely had some tough sets in there. I think I went slightly negative with Hydreigon, so not a Pokemon that I'd recommend if you're looking to climb the ranks at the current moment, but definitely more of a fun Pokemon where win or lose, the goal is just to have some fun with Hydreigon. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our members here on YouTube. The support guys provide is sincerely appreciated. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.